demonstration of creating users on the Mac computer that will be running the studio software at 7gens. The tricky part about creating these users is that we want to limit their ability to do certain things on the computer, but the software and the hardware has to talk together. So it's more than just creating the user. We have to work through some of the requirements of the software for the user. So what we're going to do is I'm logged in as a administrator here, and we're going to create the user first. So go in here to users and groups, unlock it, add a user with the plus. I'm going to create it with parental controls and call them 17 plus, and we'll create a fictional person here. And a startup password that you can let them know. Create the user. And I'll have to confirm that. There we go. Now, the parental controls that come up are adequate, but there are a couple of things that I like changing. First of all, there's no reason for them to have Game Center at all, so I'm going to turn that off. None of these tabs, except for the other, really need to be touched. On the apps, I tried limiting applications, but it was a little tough. The software, the studio software, requires touching other items, so allowing apps was problematic, or limiting apps was problematic. I'm going to turn off the Syrian dictation. It speeds up the process of creating the account. So the user is created now. But I want to get some of this information over into their login so that we can work on it. And so I have a shortcut to /users here, and LilyPad is there. And you'll see that LilyPad has, I have access to LilyPad, but I don't have access to these folders. And what I want to do is I want to have access to all of it as an administrator. So we right-click on LilyPad, get info, and then hit this lock so that we can change access. And I'm going to make all administrators have read and write access. Now that only gives read and write access to the top level. It doesn't give the enclosing items. So I'm going to select this and apply to the enclosed items. It's going to warn me. I'm going to go ahead, and it's done. Now I have access. Now that'll help us in the future to be able to grab documents, songs, and any recordings and move them for backup, that sort of stuff from a central account. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab these four things, shortcut to Google Chrome, shortcut to Studio One, the Studio Live configuration file, and a few files that have to go into application support. I'm going to grab those, copy them, and paste them right to Lily's desktop here. And there we go. Now we'll come back here and clean things up in a little bit. So, but the next stage that we're going to do is we're going to log in as her. Now, as I go to log in as her, I can leave myself logged in, but if I log in as her, I'll get this far, but because we're initiating an account, I'm going to go through some black screens here for the recording. On the screen that I'm working on, it's doing the initial setup of the account. So it's starting with a little warning about data and privacy. I'll hit continue. It's asking me to set up this Apple ID, and I'm going to choose set up later and skip. And then it's going to ask me for the dark or light mode. I'll just choose light here, and I hit continue, and it's setting up my Mac, and it should come up in the video recording right about now. There we are. Okay, so here we are. A couple things I'd like to do first. I'm going to go to System Preferences and add the right mouse click, because I do use it quite a bit, and I'm expecting that users will probably do it too, especially with the software that we're using. Okay, Studio One is the application that we need to run. We need to run it once because the library doesn't have the application support folders set up for the Studio One software yet. We need that. So we're going to run it once and not do anything with it. We'll just hit a couple of OKs here to access the microphone and contacts. And as it builds everything, we now have access to the folders that we need to copy some content in. So in here, I've got this folder to app support Persona Software Studio One, actually. These three things have to be copied into the library. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to folder in a Finder window. I clicked on this, which opens a Finder window. Go to folder / users LilyPad library. So under application support, we have this Persona software now. Since we ran Studio One once, we have the Persona software. And I have these three things that I want to copy and paste into this folder. I'm going to be overwriting the content that's there. There we go. Okay, next stage. We're going to run Studio One. And one of the key things I'm going to do is set up the MIDI configuration. We have these devices set up in the software, but they won't do any handshake with the hardware automatically. We have to do that ourselves. So I'll have a screenshot of what this is supposed to look like. But basically, the Novation launch key, if I double click that, I want it to receive from the launch key MIDI, and I want it to send to the launch key MIDI. The HUI is a user interface allowing some controls, and I'm linking that to the launch key in control. And the Casio comes from the Casio. And the Roland comes from the UM1, which is the little MIDI interface. Okay, those are done. Now the next thing we're going to do, click on Artist Profile if it isn't already selected. It should be selected by default. This defaults to the username of the licensed owner of the software. So we're going to change that. And then we're going to create a song. We're not actually going to create a song. We're going to start to create a song and change the sample rate to industry standard 48 kilohertz. And then we have to do song setup. Now, this is already fixed. I mean, it says 48 kilohertz. If you got an error, you forgot to do the 48 kilohertz when you were starting the song, it'll give you a warning that the hardware doesn't match, and you can fix it in this general area. The meta information is the meta information is about the song. We can leave that. But the I/O setup is not set up properly for this mixer. I've got it customized for the equipment that's in the 2 rooms of the studio, and we need to be able to rely on that. This is not going to be usable as is. So what we're going to do is we're going to import, and we'll go to desktop, and this I/O config is what we want. The Studio Live 24, Studio Live 16R config for 7 gens. And we open it. And you'll see what it does. It basically has 16 channels that are the Studio Live 16 rack mount, which is in the studio room. And so there's 12 channels on the front, and then there are 4 on the back. The first 2 are open, and the next 2 are used up by the audio the audio output of the drum set. So that's a stereo input. And then I've got it mapped to channels 17 to 24 on the actual mixer out in the control room. So now that we have this, I'm going to make it the default for this user so that whenever they start a new song, they're going to get this set up and they won't have to go through this again. Now we might want to do a little test here. I right now will do I'm adding a track. I'm doing an audio track. I happen to have a microphone in this room plugged into the console and channel 24. I'll do that. See if we have a signal. Yeah, I can tap on the microphone. And then I'll add another track and make sure that the instrument works. And that is coming from the CDP, the Casio big keyboard that sits beside the console. We'll say a new instrument and use the Audio MIDI synth. And then I'll click on that. I can record. I'm going to hit record. Instead of hitting record here, I should be able to hit record on the console. And sure enough, there it is. It's recording. Hello, tap, 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 tap. And I can press stop on the console, and there's my recording. Okay, so I've just confirmed that everything is hooked up for recording. So now I can close Studio One, and I'm not going to save the song, and I can delete the recordings. So now when this Studio One runs, again, everything's all set up for the user. And then the last stage, I guess we could do this. We could, on the Studio One, since I have it sitting in Recent, I can keep it in the dock so you can see it there. And maybe you want to put Chrome in and use Chrome as default, and maybe keep that in the dock as well. So now I'm done with that user, and what I'll do is I'll switch back to my user. And then in the desktop, I'm going to delete these items because they aren't really needed. Because I put them there as the system administrator, Lily is not able to delete them. But now if I switch back to Lily, her desktop's a little cleaner now with just those two icons. So that's the whole process of creating the account. There's probably going to be some refinements of that process as we learn more. Thank you.